We want to go ahead and get started. Is the microphone on?
Yep.
Okay. You all can hear me on Zoom? Not sure they can hear us on Zoom just
They
yet.
should be able to do it on.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, got a thumbs up. Welcome everyone. Please be advised that there'll be a full committee meeting of the Medford Comprehensive High School Building Committee in person at Medford High School's library at 489 Winthrop Street and via remote participation. The meeting can be viewed live on Medford Public Schools YouTube channel through Medford Community Media, which is your local cable channel, Comcast 9, 8, or 22, and or Verizon channel 43, 45, or 47. The meeting will be recorded. Participants can log in by using the following information. The Zoom meeting ID is 964-5275-2614. I am going to call the roll so we can go ahead and get started. Jenny Graham here, Mayor Longo Kern present, Dr. Galusi here, Marta Cabral here, Joan Bowen here, Ken Lord
Here.
Libby Brown here, Marissa Desmond. Maria Dorsey here, Brian Hilliard, Emily Lazaro, Paul Malone, Nicole Morrell, Aaron Olapade,
Here.
Luke Preisner, Bob Dickinson,
Here.
Fiona Maxwell,
Yeah.
Chad Fallon, Dr. Kim Talbot, here, Sophie Baselli, Roy Hodgson, here, John McLaughlin is absent, Paul Rousseau,
Present.
Phil Santos.
Here.
Hi, Phil. And Lisa Miller. So we have 11 present, no, 10 present, 5 absent. The meeting is called to order. The first item on the agenda is approval of our minutes from the April 27th building committee meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
By Maria. Is there a second?
Second.
By Aaron. Any questions before we call the roll?
So I was gonna object in their current form because the agenda for that meeting had 50 pages. And these minutes are much shorter. Can we amend the minutes to include the full agenda?
We don't normally do that.
Well, I think this is meant to go to the MSBA. And if they want to know what our minutes were, we had many space reductions proposed. And so our agenda from that night was well over 50 pages. If we send minutes that are 7 pages long, it kind of indicates that there was a meeting that didn't include 50 pages of proposals.
Well, the agenda is publicly posted, so it is not changing. So what is your request?
My request is to amend the minutes to include the entirety of, or at least the content of the agenda, which was 50 pages.
I'll second that. To show that those items were tabled.
Oh, okay, before we need it, we have a motion on the floor. Are the people who made the motion, Maria and Aaron, willing to accept that amendment?
I'm trying to understand, are you asking, you want to put the 50 pages worth also in the original agenda?
No, it's in the original.
And you want to take it out?
Incorrect.
Okay,
I want to add it to the minutes.
okay. And why, so that's because it's being sent to the MCHSBC, so you want that to be in the official minutes?
It's a record for meeting.
Okay, but if it's already public though, so why would we, if it's already public, then why does it? I'm just trying to understand like the reasoning behind adding to the minutes if it's already available.
I mean, we don't send them agendas, we don't send them minutes, is that the idea?
The idea is the minutes reflect the content of the special. And
But we're not, you're
that
you're saying
discussion
it comes on the
included
agenda.
an agenda.
Yeah.
Of many space proposal reductions. And if we delete them, then that's almost like deleting them from the formal record of the meeting.
It is
Minute
not.
for the formal record of the agenda is a preview of what the discussion should entail. So minutes come afterwards and they kind of record what was discussed. And we tabled many of those reductions or proposals. But they were part of the meeting.
And if you refer to or late.
This is just in the interest of transparency. That's it.
Everything is available online. Like, I was kind of splitting hairs here, so you all have a choice. You can either accept a friendly amendment or not, that's up to you. And if you don't, then this motion has a second and it can go forward independently.
So you motion.
I did, I'm not sure that I agree with what needs to be in the agenda.
Okay, so then we will take the roll of the approval of the agenda meeting minutes, and then we will handle the second motion that's on the floor. Jenny Graham, yes. Mayor Longo Kern,
Yes.
Dr. Galucci.
Yes.
Marta Cabral.
Yes.
Joan Bowen.
Yes.
Ken Lord.
Yes.
Libby Brown.
Yes.
Marissa Desmond. Maria Dorothy.
Yes.
Brian Hilliard. Emily Lazaro. Paul Malone. Nicole Morel. Carol Pade.
Yes.
Luke Preisner. 9 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, 5 absent. The meeting minutes are approved. There's a second motion on the floor to add to the meeting minutes the contents of the agenda. Raised by Luke, seconded by Mayor Longo Kern. I'm gonna call the roll. Jenny Graham, yes. Mayor Longo Kern,
Yes.
Dr. Galucci,
Yes.
Marta Cabral,
Yes.
Joan Bowen,
Yes.
Ken Lord,
Yes.
Libby Brown,
Yes.
Marissa Desmond, Maria Dorsey,
Yes.
Brian Hilliard, Emily Lazaro, Paul Morel, Nicole Morel, Aaron Olafate.
Yes.
And Luke Preisner.
Yes.
10 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. 4 absent. 5 absent, sorry. Motion passes. Item number 3 on our agenda is to talk a bit about the deed restriction that, was, sent to us by DCR, and the impacts of that deed restriction. So I'm gonna turn it over to the project team so that they can provide, an update on what the discovery was, what it means for the project, what the options are. And then, there is a motion on the agenda that we may choose to take up. I felt like it's important to write it out so the community can understand what's happening, and we may or may not choose to do that once we have heard from the project team. So I'm gonna let, Matt take it away.
We'll let Ellen take it away.
Good evening. Let's talk about your site. So little history, back in 1967, to allow for the building of this high school. There was a land swap done between the Metropolitan District Commission, that is now known as DCR, Department of Conservation Resources, and the city. So in that deal, there were swapping of various parcels, which you'll see in the next slide. And along with those parcels that were conveyed by, I'll say now DCR, there were some restrictions on use, what could be done on those pieces of land. Specifically, no buildings. They were meant to be held for athletics and recreation, which is DCR's mission. That restriction does have a 999-year term to it, and if you can do the math in your head, add it to 1967, and so we've got some challenges with the site, as we now know. Go to the next. So the green highlighted areas are the parcels that were conveyed by DCR to the city. Parcel that the city gave to DCR is not really highlighted, but it is to the northeast. And again, those are areas that are restricted from building into them. As part of the feasibility study, the team did bring on a land survey team, and many of you talked about the survey quite a bit with this group. It was a tremendous undertaking, more than 4 months of work that included both research, ton of field work, and then a lot of confirming work. And what happens in the early part, when they started onto the project back in November, they pulled all of the information and they started with the plans. The plans helped them map out a way to approach the field work, which again took months of time. Those plans helped them to locate monumentation and do all of the drone work, the field work, etc. A draft survey was provided to us in February. And once that work was done, they turned back to the written deeds. And that is where that language around the restriction sits. So the survey team was not aware of it themselves until end of February, early March, as best we can ascertain from talking to Brennan. However, in the meantime, we did learn from DCR. We've been having good communication coordination with DCR for the past 2 months. DCR was the entity that brought this to the project team's attention on April 28th. And of course, you're all well acquainted with the process of winnowing down the 29 PDP options to 6 in March. You saw some development of those 6 options at the meeting on April 27th. But of course, now that affects those options that you last saw in April. So the 3 options that are not affected by the restriction are A1, the code upgrade, essentially the bounds of the existing building, B 1.2, and D 1.1, which builds on the southern portion of the site and parking lot. Next. And then the 3 that do impinge on restricted areas are C 2.2, C 3.4, and D 2.1, which is, predominantly up on food. So what the team has done since, and also informed by what we heard at the community meeting last Monday, a strong preference for the C options, which allow you to keep your gym and pool and renovate them. We've gone back to the drawing board literally and worked with those 2 C options to modify them to work within the bounds, I'll call it. And we'd like to show those to you this evening.
Before we move on, does anyone on the committee have any questions about the deed restriction before we look at these alternatives? If they would like the project team to answer. Nicole?
I just noticed the language, and maybe that's just erring on the side of caution, is that the yellow shaded areas are what is currently understood to be. Could you explain why there's like hedging language there and not like this is what it is?
As in no buildings can be put.
Sorry, just like the currently understood language I'm asking about, like, this is the area, or it's not the area.
Oh, it is.
Okay, it's just, that was just like section, the words that we
Yeah,
used.
sorry if it was clear.
Yeah, no, it's what it says on the slides. not
Oh,
what
okay,
it
okay.
says. Yeah.
Paul?
Violating it already?
With your existing high school? No.
Nothing is up on Everly, it's a building of any sort.
There are structures on it. There is a shed.
Okay.
There's a shed as well that's out in the back corner across, which is on the strip. So there are some potential areas that need to get addressed.
Lisa, is parking allowed on the areas covered by the
My understanding is no, it's been no buildings. There is language about the access, allowing access road. And actually, it's a good question about parking, that should be clarified once a land use determination is brought brought into the picture and we can better understand the intent here.
Can I ask about the status of?
Luke? I need you all to like wait to be recognized because there's a lot of people here and I want to make sure that everybody is we are getting to all the people with all the questions. So Luke has the floor.
Can I ask about the status of the onboarding land use attorney? What was the status?
The project team has developed a scope. And our understanding is the city may have at their disposal an attorney that would be right for this work. But we don't yet have that person on board, I don't believe.
Yeah, we have reached out to her. She has all of the documentation for the deed restriction. We did also reach out to 3 other independent land use attorneys just to bring them into the loop on what was going on. But we feel it's best to go through the city's land use attorney, just, they know the area better, they, understand the community, so that's the path that we're moving forward right now, and they do have that information, so hopefully, we'll follow up shortly and start to understand what, potential paths forward there are for the actual restricted land.
Mr. Chair, Member Graham.
Mayor?
Through the chair, thank you. Sharon is from Copeland and Page, and again, she does have all the information as of this week. And confirm that she has the time to help us with this. I just wanted to point out to this committee that we have funding, obviously, in our fiscal year 26 budget. But last night there was talks of cutting the legal budget for the city of Medford for fiscal year 27 by the city council. So I just want to point that out in hopes that does not happen, as we really want to continue to develop Medford Square, work on this project, and many, many other things.
So can I ask a point of clarification? Would the charges from Copeland and Page be absorbed by the city, or would those be transferred to the school building project?
Undecided yet. I think we're having an emergency kind of situation where we need a land use attorney, so that hasn't been discussed. But one way or another, I'm just pointing out if it was being asked for the city to help out in any way, our legal fees are being discussed to be eliminated for fiscal year 27.
And any expenditure by this committee would come to this committee for approval before expenditure. Luke?
I know this topic was received a lot of discussion from the public and the public is here. Will the public have an opportunity to speak on this topic before we move on to the next topic?
We will happily hear from the public, but I wanted to pause to give the committee a chance to ask questions before we continue, but when they are done with their presentation, yes, we'll be happy to. Maria?
This is something I'm totally not familiar with. Is there, have you seen land restrictions like this overturned? Or are we going down a road that's hasn't been brought down before?
It's fairly common, actually, based on school projects. Of course, knowing sooner would have been much preferred. And actually, I'm going to turn to Erin to talk about the process. She's very familiar with the Article 97 process to.
Yeah, so open space is protected in the Commonwealth, and it requires legislative action to remove it because you have to swap land in another place in the municipality. There's risk associated with that, there's time, and there's fee associated with that too. But land swap is also a trigger to comply with the state regulations for the MIPA regulations, and so there's additional soft costs associated with completing land swap. I think the question that our team has is what has happened since this deed restriction in 1967. So there's some research that needs to be completed by the attorney. That's going to be a critical step in understanding what the options are going forward. But that is a question we have as well.
So the other salient points are that the mayor, the superintendent and I spoke with the state delegation. All 4 of them dropped basically everything to come chat with us last week. They made some immediate outreach to DCR to understand from DCR like what and to just be able to confirm like what a path forward might look like so that we could assess that impact and bring that to all of you. DCR was like very helpful and forthcoming. They spoke with all of their legal folks, and like the unanimous agreement is that an Article 97 process would have to be done. Our delegation is very confident that if Article 97 process has to happen and legislative action is required, that they could get it done. They believe they could even get it done by the end of session in July. However, I don't think the rest of the process could happen nearly that quickly. And the sequence of events is something that I have asked them for clarification on. They've been wonderfully cooperative and supportive, as has DCR. So there are potentially paths forward there, but we don't know that for sure one way or the other at this point. That would, and in the legislature, it requires a voice vote of 2/3 of the legislature. Any other questions? It's a roll call vote, yeah. Nicole?
Thank you, Jenny. So understanding where we are and what has happened, the path forward includes using only the designs that we narrowed down to and the new iterations that are going to be shown to us. There's no option. I'm not saying I want this, but just trying to understand what the process is. There's no option for going back to that 29 and figuring out ones that have a different overlay on the land that we may rule out and now we want to bring back for obvious reasons.
I think that's up to the committee. I think we may want to look at these options before we sort of reopen that can of worms. What would be impacted is our timeline, because the estimating has already been completed and includes these like alternate designs. Like if we went back to something that we had previously discarded, there would be some like catch-up work that would have to be done on that option. And it could impact essentially our timeline, our decision-making timeline. So we have to sort of keep that in mind. It is absolutely an option that this committee could choose to vote on. You all received from me maybe an hour or so ago, a letter from SMMA CEO with a pretty detailed rundown from her perspective of what has happened that has led to this point. I received that from her this afternoon and have shared it with you all. So if there are questions about that, I'm going to point you to Helen and Matt, and you can feel free to reach out to them via email to get any questions answered. It is a meaty document. It is a meaty timeline, but it does sort of lay out the timeline and sequence of events as she knows it. Why don't we take a look at the options that you all have created since this news was discovered?
All right, I'll take it away. So we're gonna look at alternatives for C 2.2 and C 3.4, the two on the left. And the first one we'll introduce is C 2.2A. And here you can see on the large image kind of in the center left, that was the original C 2.2. And just a reminder of some of the aspects of these that maybe differentiated it from some of the other options. We're renovating the gym, renovating the pool, making use of those assets. It was also looking for space on the site that could accommodate a large phase one of the project. And the goal with a large phase one was to essentially minimize or eliminate modular classrooms, which we heard loud and clear. So the goal was always to find open space on the site to make that happen. So that's why we were looking at Petrelli Field and looking at that hillside on the western part of the gymnasium, and trying to avoid much of the existing school as we could on the first two phases, so that the school could remain in operation while construction activity takes place kind of behind the school and on the side of the school. So you can see on the image on the right, we've started to take all the things that we really liked about the scheme, all the adjacencies that we learned about in the previous study, all the need for access for some of the CTE spaces that need ground floor yards and things like that. And started to manipulate it to be within the deed restriction line. So that's why you see this pretty hard edge on the western and northern side of the site. That's the building starting to pull away from Edgerly Field, pull away from that hillside, and start to kind of reorient itself still around the gymnasium. And I think one thing to point out with this is that the educational vision is really still intact, which is the most important thing. And you'll see, I think a lot of the differences actually happen with some of the site components. And you'll notice the original, there was room for a track, football field and front yard. But as the building gets pushed around, that becomes a lot more challenging spatially as that wing moves toward the east. There's a possibility of perhaps on Edgerly Field now with this new option to locate a football field and track. It's still pretty tight up there. We'll have to really work to make that happen, but at this level, it looks like it could work right there. All right, that's the question before we move on from this one. So earlier, I think in the fall, there was aerial survey, we marked borders, but I recall there was also like some kind of remote sensing to characterize the composition of the ground. I know this new footprint occupies essentially a parking lot and maybe some courtyard. I wanted to ask if the soils there were characterized and already deemed suitable for any foundations and digging that would have to occur to find any rock. What were your findings in these new areas?
I think generally the soil is as suitable as the other soils on both of these building areas. Once we have a preferred alternative, we head into schematic design. We may supplement this geotechnical explorations with additional borings or what have you, based on where the actual building is going to go to confirm our assumptions. But I'd say for all intents and purposes, soil conditions are about the same in both of these schemes.
I think what we found, right, is that like generally across the site, about 4 to 6 feet down, you hit rock almost everywhere, aside from that area that's under the B wing towards the front that used to be a quarry and sort of a trash dump historically. And so that's where it goes deeper. I think one of the nice things about this option and the C3.4 option, as we move away from that deed restricted area, we actually move away from the hillside and the rocks. So there should be less cost and less effort associated as we pull away from, say, the football practice field, and we're building up from the lower portion of ground as opposed to digging itself into the hill.
Aaron?
I have a quick question. It was something that another member mentioned earlier about parking and just like access roads. Are access roads separated from parking when it comes to just like, is that, yeah, it's the first question.
Yeah, I mean, the parking is not specifically addressed in the deed restriction. Access roads are. So we know that access roads are okay. I think it's a fair question to ask about the parking, and I think we would look at that with land council, just to understand, and probably discussion with DCR as well.
Thank you very much.
So following on that, is there a do not exceed width on access roads so that you could potentially incorporate parking? With the access road?
There's no width indicated for the access roads in the deed restriction.
All right, let's keep moving on this, and again, zero modular classrooms with the schema. That's important to note. Parking, although you don't see parking on this diagram, those fields all have either the option to be surface lots or to be a parking deck with a field on top. That'll be the same for both schemes. Again, this is a renovation of these. Should also mention that, though we're kind of manipulating the footprint of the building, we're not increasing the height. This is still a five level building. And we'll just quickly walk through the plans. That first floor is early childhood education. These are very similar to what we saw last time, and that occupies kind of the lowest level. anything in that hatch area that's just indicates that that's below grade, underground, so it's kind of digging into the hill. As you elevate up to the second floor, which is still, there'll be a driveway that gets us up there, so you're able to walk in, so it's a walk, and that's the main entry. School, the left, again, you'll have a little bit of early childhood education on the second floor, central office. And then you'll have a lot of your public facing CTE, those there in the pink on the right side, the entry courtyard. That's things like the cafe, bistro, cosmetology. I think, television and film. You'll access kind of a grand stair that will take you up to the third level. And there you'll enter this dining common space, which is indicated in yellow. To the left will be the auditorium. And beyond that, the arts wing. And then the gymnasium and fitness and health education, kind of indicated in orange. And as we keep elevating up through the building, in terms of the more academics mixed in with a few more spaces, again, as we're going up the hill toward the back, have automotive and other CTE spaces that will have access off the back. And the upper floors are, again, a mixture of CTE spaces that don't need ground floor access and more academic.
Paul?
While it says 6th floor, it's really like 5.
Yeah, we were kind of in that little potion stand, right, as kind of level 0. Thank you.
And with this new design, in fact, it would be all one. Well, more with the new thing. Not having the ability. Do you think during construction, we still restrictions are the restrictions? So you can't probably use the field for construction equipment and all that stuff. We also couldn't turn that into parking. So if we have so much existing parking now, are we gonna have to be running shuttle buses? It doesn't look like a lot of room for existing high schools to be in there. To build a new one, and to have 425 parking spots.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I can offer that we have seen in terms of temporary utilization of site, even deed restricted sites. That is something that typically we're allowed to do. There may have to be an approval process with it, but it should be a short approval process, and that it's just something that is common when these types of scenarios arise. In terms of the overall site logistics, managing construction laydown area, parking for the workers that are coming, fields as well, trying to manage all that. We're not quite there yet in terms of understanding all those moving parts and pieces. It'll help when we have a construction manager on board with the team to make all of those decisions a little bit more valid in terms of moving forward. But it's certainly going to be a challenge, and some of those things that you mentioned could be on the table as part of the solution. Just don't know the full answer yet.
thank you. I have one more question. So the field in the back, whatever it becomes, field on the side, whatever it becomes. Can those be part of this project? I mean, they're existing fields, they're nothing to do with building high school, they're literally on limits. But we don't want them the way they are, we wanna spend a fortune on them, or whatever it costs. So how does that qualify as being part of this project?
You know, the restriction language is quite limited. It says athletics and recreation. So those things qualify.
Right, but I just meant like, why would the MSBA count that change?
It is part of the project. The city owns that property. It does have a deed restriction on it, but it is part of our overall property area for the project. So it would be no different than any other school project that has a property line around it, and everything within the property line is part of the project moving forward. There's certainly site caps on reimbursement and things that we'll get to because we have a large site, but there's nothing unique about sort of the deed restriction from an NSBA funding or participation perspective.
It just seems odd to me that the MSBA would be like, here's a field you have, you wanna have essentially the same field when you're done. Why would they participate in that? In a reimbursement at all? And maybe we don't know yet, maybe they will say, sure, you can do all this, but I don't know, but it's just a concern I know.
So one more question about um, restrictions. So, we are considering, geothermal, energy solutions. Are those, ruled out on 13 acres?
So I would say that we need some input from land council there as well, but we do have precedent projects where we are putting geothermal wells below Article 97 land. And that has been deemed to be acceptable. I think we have to run out that scenario here. Confirm that as well, but I think there's a good likelihood of that being completely viable.
And is it clear from the deed history that those parcels were in fact deeded to the city for the purpose of athletic use? Is that clear from the language?
It's just that restriction that, yeah, fields and are allowed to be there. It's a very,
It's pretty terse.
yeah.
Recreation and athletic purposes.
I have a question about, so this design in the next one, keep the current gym. What about space underneath the gym? Like I know that currently there's some renovations being done for the plumbing program. What's happening with the space under the gym? It may have been there and I just missed it as it went by, but it's a large space.
I think the current plans have it slated some for storage, some potentially for mechanical room within the building. The existing mechanical room is the piece that sticks out to the north of the pool and makes that turn around the northeast corner of the building, so perilous as it goes. So all of our plans, aside from the A option, are looking at taking that down to improve that traffic circulation around the corner. And we're going to need a new mechanical room in the building. There's not a lot of great things that you can end up putting below the gymnasium or don't like natural light, right? So mechanical room is a good one, storage is a good one. We'll look and find whether there's other things to go down there as we move forward in the process, but it is certainly a subset of programs that want to be down in that space, and it is large. Yeah.
Brian?
Just a quick question. I noticed like on the original school you guys had, you guys weren't shy on the side field about having sort of roaded access, because I think you're kind of cutting into the contours. And you've got it also for Edgewood Field for the city up on top. But in particular, this one looks like you shy away from having, keep it up on top of the access points, but you don't have it on this one. Is that just because of the contours falling off, or is that a different state?
I think what's actually going to happen, so I know that when the earth is showing sort of going up to the building, it sort of seems like we're still into the hillside. What we'll probably want to end up doing is filling in land there so that we can have that access to the side along the football field that's there. There's also the potential option here, which was really more challenging in the previous version of C22A and C34A, which is that 360 road for first responders as well as service going around the building. Here, because we have that sort of long length, we can actually come down along the building. So I think what we're going to be trying to manage is having that road dropping while also trying to maintain as much access high as possible into that second floor.
Pushes on.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I presume the program sort of follows it. If you access the program follows on the side, right? Okay.
Right. I think so. Robotics is one of the potential good fits up there because they don't necessarily need outdoor access to be able to get vehicles in and out, but they don't necessarily have like an outdoor yard space that they're building in on top of the deed restriction. So I think we'll be looking for programs that are like that and that have the desirable adjacencies that maybe are ending that in that particular area.
You want to move on to the next one?
So just a couple aerial views of those plans. You should look a little bit familiar with what we saw last time we showed these. And then we can just touch on the phasing really quickly. All of these have a phasing story. So like I said earlier, phase one, attempts to build as much as we can on the side and the back and renovating the gymnasium pool. It all happens at the same time. Then portions of the existing school get demolished and we come in and build essentially the rest of the new school. Come back in, demolish the remainder of the building and do all the site work, movements there. So it's like a three-phase process for this. Okay. Let's visit C34A. Again, on the left side, that was the original proposal. It kind of had these wings that flowed around the gymnasium. Again, we like this one because it had a lot of the same things that we liked about the previous one, building on the side of the hill. And then treating the additions around the gym in a slightly different way. And this one was a little bit even more of a compact school, as it was focusing a lot of the building around the gym. So what we've done with those curved wings is just gently bend them back to avoid that deed restriction and shorten the length of the one on the north and move around square footage a little bit. So that's the biggest change with this one. So it's an evolution of the plan on the left. Again, you can see the front yard of the site, just like the last one, gets a lot more compressed than it previously was. And then more of that, more of Edgerly Field is utilized for perhaps a track and football field up there, or the lower two fields are a little bit smaller. So again, zero modular classrooms with this option. Parking essentially in the front of the building, either below those fields or surface parking in place of those fields. Renovating to the pool. And we'll walk up the first floor here. Again, with early childhood on the left, public facing CTE spaces on the right, walking into the dining or commons area. The dining auditorium will also be right off of this main entry. That's that purple volume on the left, and a few other support spaces. As we move up a larger stair, the second floor has the gymnasium, media center, and more of the physical education spaces in orange out back, with more of those CT spaces that will be, that need public access to the site. Those that are on the west side. Then we go up to the third and fourth floors here. So mostly academic environments, really a full loop. There's no dead ends in the scheme. They all kind of wrap around that gymnasium. There's a couple of opportunities for light courts or light wells between the gymnasium and the building. And the fifth floor. So here you can see that aerial view. Does a nice job of being probably even a little bit more compact of a school than the previous scheme. Which I think is a benefit for, think about that 3-minute travel time between classes for our students.
Questions about this revision?
So looking at the footprint and focusing on the geometry, the access roads, what we see here, is that fixed and renewable? Or would there be the possibility of creating a loop around the athletic fields in front of the property, so that someone could either upon entering take I'll say a left, shortest distance to school, drop their kid off, and then wrap around and exit by going around the fields. I feel like that kind of geometry from a traffic flow perspective is helpful. It creates a buffer. It's a kind of like a catch basin for the flow. Is that a possibility, or are we looking at something that's kind of renewable because of regulation?
I don't think anything's immutable at this point in time, but I'll let Erin chime in, just, we had this same conversation a little bit earlier today.
Yeah, I think there's work to be done on the circulation. I think the goal when we design circulation is for flexibility. We like to prioritize those students riding buses and give them closest access to the building entrance. But we also need to keep in mind the volume of single passenger vehicles that come to the site 2 times a day, every day. I hope we can continue to work and refine this, and yes, there'll be changes to accommodate things like better. Yeah.
Other questions from the committee before we? Okay.
And phasing is essentially the same strategy as the previous one. Build as much as we can on day one, renovate the amazing pool, and then start pulling down strategically portions of the existing school. Building the rest, phase 2, leading the project, third phase.
Okay. Any questions before we, or comments before we talk about, paths forward, or questions about path forward? Lisa?
Are we replacing 3 options with the 2?
So the motion that's on the agenda, let me just read it so that everyone, can hear it. I know it's hard to see. After talking to the team about what these options were, I put this together so that we could all like anchor to something. If we want to call this, we can, we don't have to. But I thought it was important to put it on the agenda so that the public had some awareness that we might be making some changes. So whereas the project team recently learned about a deed restriction that limits the ability to build on parts of Edgeley Field and the football practice field, lifting the restriction would require an Article 97 process. And whereas Article 97 process would not be completed prior to the scheduled selection of a single preferred option on June 10th, 2026, be it resolved that the Medford Comprehensive High School Building Committee will formally eliminate C2.2, C3.4, and D2.1 from further consideration. Be it further resolved that the Medford Comprehensive High School Building Committee will formally adopt the modifications represented in C2.2A, C3.4A for consideration. Be it also resolved that the project team will align cost estimates to these newly adopted modifications, C2.2A and 3.4A, by the 5/27 meeting without incremental. So to answer your question, yes, what this motion says is we are eliminating D2.1, and we are replacing C2.2 and C3.4 with these revised options. And we would still have our code upgrade, we would still have our B option, and we would still have 1D new build option, which is what the MSBA requires us to send. That is what the motion says. Questions? Debbie?
So we're still going through, I want to check, are we still going to go ahead and look into Article 97 blind spot options? So say we proceed, we pick one of the C options, go forward, we can still find out if there's a little bit of wiggle room later in case we need it, or we say we won't bother time.
No, I mean, we still have to pursue some portions of that for a variety of reasons. Not just about this, but also there's like ongoing conversation about a secondary egress to the site. And that is not anything that has to be decided before we pick a single option, but it would absolutely require Article 97. So in my mind, what I want us to do is like have a bigger picture of what requires Article 97 so that we're not sort of stopping and starting multiple times to sort of get where we need to go. So yes, we can certainly make these choices, and if we have a path forward that allows us to sort of shift that deed restriction or lift it in exchange for something, all of those things can happen as the project goes through schematic design, up until a certain point when the building has to actually be locked into place. But I think we're talking about that as October, so there is still some time to vet and to pursue that, if we want to. Oop,
I don't want to preempt the agenda, so I would maybe suggest delaying any vote on this until after we discuss the feedback. I did read the partial set of feedback that was shared. I got through the whole thing. There's only one section that's underlined, and it has to do with an option. I imagine we'll talk about it when we get to that part of the agenda. I think that should, what that says should be part of the consideration of what we carry forward. I think if we voted on this now, in the absence of that, it would be a mistake.
are you making a motion to take the agenda out of order?
I think you are.
Yeah, what does that mean exactly?
It means we're gonna suspend the rules, like people, when we post an agenda, people expect that we're gonna move in that order, and so when you move out of order, like, the committee has to vote that we're like fine with that change of the order of the, in sequence of the agenda.
But so just, for point of clarification, I guess, not the process, don't understand. So by me recommending that we defer this until later, suspending the agenda,
You're suspending the rules to take an item on the agenda out of order. And that matters to the public who may be listening
Yeah,
or
yeah.
may be planning to tune in, so.
yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, it would just be a motion to table this.
It's totally fine if that's what you wanna do. It really is.
We just-
I don't think it's necessary personally, but it's totally fine too.
I mean, I don't fully understand. Okay,
Yeah, it's just Robert's rules of order. It's procedural.
all right, I guess I am making that one.
Okay.
I mean, as you can see, I'm nervous because I don't fully understand all this.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's Robert's rules of order, and I know that's like sort of another thing to like learn as you're part of these public bodies, so I totally get it. Not a problem, but we have to like take a vote and call the roll, so that when somebody comes, behind us in 6 months and says, I wanted to be able to provide comment about that thing you were going to vote on, and you took the agenda out of order and I didn't get to, that there's record that we're like knowingly and consciously making that decision.
Can we ask if anyone's here to make comment on this?
We can, so we can take comment and then you can make a motion, but it sounded like you wanted to sort of switch gears right now.
No, I'm unsure, and now that I'm learning about the consequences of what I said, I do want to give people who showed up, because it's a pretty good turnout. If anyone's here to talk about this specific item, I want them to have that opportunity. So
Okay,
I am not going to make a motion.
okay, perfect. Just hold that motion if you change your mind in the future. Was there somebody else that had a question?
What? Now I'd like a little, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
a little clarification, because I sort of feel like maybe to layer onto what you were saying, that if we are considering that the C options may, depending on how the article goes, may breathe back into those spaces if the land swap works or things like that. That to me, that's no different than keeping D to put on the table, because it's kind of the same thing, is that we're getting into those spaces if we literally say, we used to have this field, we're gonna have this field.
I think the difference in as I crafted this is that there is no D 2.1 path forward as an alternative. So we would be knowingly adopting an item that absolutely positively requires Article 97 versus adopting a revised version of something that could maybe revert back to that original symmetry, right? But if it can't, we still have an option. The problem with D 2.1 is it is entirely on the field. There is nowhere to put it that it could exist if we had to really live within the bounds of the deed restriction.
And I guess my only thought is if the Article 97 says in a hurry that yes, we can get there, we can do this, then I would just
be a little remiss if we didn't have an option that took full advantage of that.
I never hear people talk about Article 97 in a hurry. I'm not a lawyer's attorney, but as soon as you say that,
I know
everyone's
it's a stretch, I know it's a stretch.
and they sort of wits, right? But certainly, if there had to be legislative action, like the goal would be by end of July, it would not be in advance of. And so again, we could do that, but it would have timing impacts for the project that, we'd have to talk about.
So I guess the question is there a way to move forward with it on the table? And if it's a timing impact, it just goes away.
We could choose not to eliminate it tonight, but I also like in all the feedback of all the options, there's not a lot of popularity of that option either for me. And so as I've listened to everybody and I've seen how people like sort of react and prefer to these things, like for me anyway, like there's like nothing worth keeping there. But that's just my opinion and I'm one person on this committee. So we certainly could do that too. That is absolutely an option.
I'm just sort of looking for feedback.
Yeah.
Only because I don't want to.
Yeah, sure. Nicole, did you have?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I do wonder if that, like, and I totally hear what you're saying, I just wonder if that would just say for people who are not as dialed in to be seeing something that may very well not be an option to be carried forward.
Right. Are there any members of the public here in person or online that would like to speak? If you're online, please use the raised hand feature and we will get to you. If you're here in person, there is a public comment chair and we do need you to sit in it so that the people online can hear you. Folks are asked to give their name and address for the record and comments are limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
Matt? Thank you.
Nick, your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Troleo. I live in 40 Roxon Road. So I'm very deeply disappointed with this restriction being missed. This is a really serious mistake. And I think it's important that in moving forward, obviously we want to kind of keep things going, but we also want to recognize what we're on here and sure going forward, something like this doesn't happen again. The reason I think this is a serious error is because this totally violates MSBA rules. I'll quote for you, advisory number 45. At the preliminary design program phase, all site plans should be presented with potential development restrictions identified. The MSBA requires a summary of the process undertaken, identify all potential issues and steps that are taken to resolve them. So obviously we didn't comply with that. And it's a problem because the MSBA regulations say that we don't comply with its the enabling statute, the regulation, as well as the advisory guidelines pose risk of losing support of the project altogether. So it's really important that we recognize these limitations moving forward. In terms of moving forward though, honestly, I think this isn't really a legal decision. I think it's more just a political decision. What do we do here? Article 97 or try to modify the designs. I think the motion actually is pretty simple. So I'm kind of leaning towards that, but I honestly don't know. I think this committee should spend quite a deal of time deliberating over how do we move forward from here. I'd like to see accountability though for this mistake. I want to see full transparency and error. I'd like to know precisely when we were informed of deed restrictions. I heard the April date referenced earlier, which is helpful. But I'd ultimately like some sort of report from this committee discussing what went wrong here and proposing steps to make sure mistakes like this don't happen in the future. And also just some transparency on the cost of rectifying this mistake. So for example, 2 designs proposed here that are new, 2 alterations, how much time and money was spent making those alterations? I think the public deserves that transparency. And I think we also need to try to restore trust, trust in this committee due to this terrible mistake. And I really hope everybody just acknowledges it, moves forward, and tries to do something reasonable to keep us going. Do what we ultimately need to do here, which is get students of our city a new learning facility. Thank you.
Not seeing any hands online. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Hi there.
Hello,
Your name and address for the record, please.
Irene Girardi, 31 Headland Lane. I basically just have a comment that with everything that's been going on and people are talking about project deadlines, mistakes have been made. And my concern is we're rushing too quickly without really looking at everything. It seems like even people on the committee have questions, but around the public, we don't even know what to ask. I think the dates that are here should be moved as we look at more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Your name and address for the record.
Andrew Bengtson, 11 Hastings Lane in Medford. Couple questions for the architects. The modular, right, modulars, they're about 1,000 square foot, give or take,
From a modular classroom,
a modular classroom, yeah.
probably closer to 700 to 800, somewhere in that range. They can be of any size, but they're limited by the trailer weight.
Right, like a trailer 24 by 36, it's about 900 square foot, maybe 960, let's call it 1,000 just for ease of moving around. 52 of these modulars, right? In option A, where would those modulars go?
So there was, if we go way back, we literally looked at a couple different locations on the site where you could just physically place them before you get to any of the considerations of where would you want to place them. So there's a limited number of areas, and I think we were looking exclusively at a 2-story modular situation because of all the various competing site interests on a very tight site, the fact that we still have to educate students here while construction is ongoing, so that drove us. I'd say the most viable site, ignoring all other considerations, is on the parking lot to the south, because it's the closest run for utilities coming into the site. It's the easiest for access around and not disrupting. It does take away the most viable parking area on the overall site. So as a downside too, there are some other options as well, but it's not completely blue sky in terms of where we can position it.
And now, well, so that option works with the deed restriction at the moment, right?
The A option.
Well, so I'm picking up on another school committee member talked about, can we actually, use the protected space as laydown space? So unlikely. Maybe, but the modulars, because they're gonna be around for a while, they can't in the earlier schemes. They'd have to comply with that deed restriction.
Yeah, I think we need land council to weigh in there. I mean, they are temporary buildings by nature. They're not something permanent that's getting there. We haven't gone through that exact situation in our experience, but I could see it actually going one or two ways pretty easily in terms of how the discussion played out, because they are temporary as opposed to permanent structures.
And so let's go with the idea that they're on the parking lot to the south there. Have you all thought about building a structure, like a steel structure, and then putting the modulars on top so that you preserve the parking, and then you put the modulars on top of a steel structure?
So you would park underneath the modulars. Is what you're suggesting.
So no change to the parking lot. You would put some columns up, throw some beams around, pour some concrete, put the modulars 2 stories.
Yeah.
On top of this, deck, let's say.
So we haven't considered that approach in particular. I think there would be there's a cost sort of price point to jump up there. You just have more stairs and elevators and that type of thing. It's not impossible, certainly, but we haven't necessarily considered that particular scenario.
Right. And then, I mean, it's
I'm sorry.
bummer. I was just getting to some good stuff. Well, guess I'll have to come back later. Can I come back later tonight? How often can I come up?
Please feel free to email your questions. They're good ones and we're happy to answer them.
Yeah.
Please feel free to email your questions. But people are allowed to speak one time on each topic. So.
Got it. Okay, cool.
So.
The last thing, I just want to say, I think that the option A and B are still probably the most sustainable from a embodied carbon standpoint. And that would be the greenest option. So if we're concerned at all about being green in our progressive city, those are the options we should be really looking at. Thank you.
Zoe Moutsos online. I'll give her 1 second.
What she want? Big stick her hand down.
Yeah.
Are you guys
There
waiting?
she is.
Sorry,
Hi, Zoe. Name and
I have
address for the record, please.
bad connection. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, Zoe Moutsos, 33 Johnson Ave. Apologies for my bad connection. I think my kid is like streaming something enormous right now. Anyway, I have two questions, but first I wanted to thank the full team here for like quickly like creating alt versions of C2 or whichever ones they are, and C3, 4A, whatever. The alt versions that we saw, because I think that was really, I thought we were going to be down to looking at just 3 options, and we actually still have 5 that are very doable. And, you know, some of them to me look really amazing. So I appreciate the quick work. I know that you are all under a lot of pressure, and this is a very tense situation, and I am looking forward to hearing, you know, how we got here and making sure that we move forward and nothing like this happens again. So anyway, thank you for that. I wanted to follow up on a question I think Paul had brought up, and then ask another one. One is just when you do the bigger presentation next week with the presentation, if it is appropriate for that meeting or at a meeting soon after, could we get a little understanding of what the parking situation might look like during the build? As I've said before, my kid's not going to have the benefit of this amazing building, but he's going to be going to school there. We're going to be going to sports events there and orchestra events there and just events there in general. So I'd like to get, I think the community might like to hear kind of what the world will be like while we're building the building. And then also sort of understanding what is going to happen to the playing fields that are there now while the new building is being built. So will they be playing more at Hormel? Will they be playing in Playstead? Like what might that look like? Just kind of a fuller picture of the life of those groups of students who are going to be learning and playing and the community during the build. Thank you.
So I'm gonna let the project team field most of your question, but yes, I agree that there is a need for that kind of conversation about life and construction in general. I don't think it will happen in June because we're still talking about many options, so there would be like many lives to talk about, but as soon as there is a single option, I think that becomes like much easier to plan for and manage, and we can definitely dedicate a meeting to that. So I'll let Matt jump in as well.
Yeah, and I'll just say, Zoe, that it's completely understandable that everyone wants to know that information as soon as possible. And it's just that we are a little bit early in terms of being able to provide good, credible information that will help people understand how the site is going to operate. All the things that you described, though, are potentials that are on the table in terms of field activities happening elsewhere in the city. We have started those conversations with the athletic director and the district offices as well to try to figure out what opportunities are there. But until we know specifically what option we're looking at and then sort of how the phasing is going to play out, it's difficult to provide those concrete answers. We will get them out to everybody just as soon as we possibly can because we understand the importance of that for everybody's daily lives, especially those that are sort of intersecting with the school here on a regular basis.
Thank you, Matt. Any other questions from people on the line? Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please come on up.
We'll comment you.
I
better watch my.
That's right. Your name and address for the record, please.
Sharon DSO, I live corner of Mass Avenue Circuit Road. Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I was a little late. I was waiting for a high school student to help me with my lawn and he had a baseball game. So that was, I think, not what I done tomorrow. I'm just asking if anyone should make you looking on, and I'm the neighbor's messenger today. No, you go, no, I'm in. Could I ask anyone who's on the board or is it a commission to just raise your hand so I could just know where the deciding board is?
Are you asking who the voting members are?
Who is, who's structuring all of the ideas, et cetera?
These are the voting members. The project team
Okay,
is being paid by the city of Medford
okay,
to lead the project, build the idea, the options, et cetera.
okay. The other questions were, how many, I noticed that one or two people raised their hand before they were architects. And, question was addressed to an architect. How many architects are there, on the voting? Just one or two voting, or is it?
They're the ones designing, but there's some of us who are on the committee, we're not doing this.
Oh, okay. So how many on the committee then who will be voting, actually were involved with raising school? Built school buildings?
Two.
Okay,
Two architects.
okay, and, engineers?
Luke is an engineer.
One of them. Okay.
And so this, all of the information about the team's credentials is on our website if you want to clear.
So also one of the questions was, one of my first questions and my neighbors also was, about 8 or 10 years ago, Winchester was involved in a similar situation because, they actually were getting more enrollment than they thought. And of course, Winchester sort of being, lovely and more, I would call it uppity town. Their residents were very concerned about their children. What happened was, and I know this is, they overbuilt. So they were within a building, that was fine. And some of that space wasn't used, and they had an extra building on the side that was about half the size of this structure that was empty. So, I think it's very proven that everybody knows too, we're the best site to look to follow up with, the results of all of these meetings and the square footage that we really think you might need to think out, because I have a friend also whose sister teaches in another nearby school, and, they're saying their enrollments are all predictably down for the next 5 to 6 years. So our question is, how soon is this expected to begin if one of these options does pass? And in the meantime, we understand the electrical updates really need to be done. And of course, any place you go when you work in public, especially teaching, the first question they ask you, what is the most imminent thing in the classroom? Is the safety of your student. Get about your lesson plans to safety. So we're wondering how bad the electrical is, and will that be addressed before any meaningful construction goes on after Mr. Attorney Bulio's presentation is made tonight? We're just wondering, because that might be an interfering factor.
Okay, let me see if I can try to answer some of your questions. There's a part of the Medford Public Schools website is dedicated to this project. So to answer your question about where to go for updates, that is the place, that is the source of information that is coming from the project team that is vetted and credible. So if you have questions, that's a good place to look. On that site, there is a detailed enrollment study that was performed by the MSBA to make sure that we in fact don't overbuild. And ultimately, we reached an agreement with them about the size of this student population that essentially looks at our current student population and makes a modest increase, which was backed by the data around real estate pattern and birth rates and all of those good things here. So it was an independent vetted study done by the MSBA that we had to supply information to and agree to, but that is all on our project website. And you can look there for any of that information. In terms of the electrical question, I think we probably might have to get back to you on that one because I'm not sure I understand the question and we can talk about that later. But if the question is the building safe for students right now? The answer is yes. We do what we need to do to keep this building moving forward. And frankly, that's getting harder and harder every single day. So something does have to change in this building in order for us to be able to continue to provide a suitable environment for kids.
Thank you. So in other words, it could be that the electrical, if needed, could be pursued before any reconstruction is started. In other words, to build electrical, I mean, it wouldn't be.
Well, a code upgrade of this building is what option A is, and that will cost us over $500 million. So a code upgrade is not a simple endeavor, but it is an option this committee is able to consider. Yes.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Thanks. And then the other question, that you had actually, fed off of a question from the resident, who spoke first. And, we have received a detailed timeline from SMA. They have been hired by the city of Medford. They've provided a detailed timeline of what happened. And I'll happily post that on the site tomorrow. It was received this afternoon, like at 4:30. And you all can read that and digest that how you consume that how you'd like. And we are in conversation, the mayor, the superintendent and I, along with the project team, to make sure that there is accountability for this mistake. It was a mistake. It was a mistake that we will hold people accountable for. And those things often are quite complicated and take time, but we agree that there was a huge mistake made here, 100%. And figuring out how do we move forward with a timeline that serves the kids and this project while pursuing accountability is what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Welcome. Is there anybody else who would like to weigh in? Okay, seeing none on Zoom. Would you like to move forward before we talk about how to address this? Would you like to talk about the PDP comments? Let's take that item out of order so that we can come back to this discussion.
Yes.
Okay, so a motion to suspend the rule and take agenda item 4 out of order by Luke. Is there a second? I'll second. Seconded by Dr. Booth. I'll call the roll. Jenny Brand, yes. Mayor Wendell Kern.
Yes.
Dr. Galusi.
Yes.
Marta Cabral.
Yes.
John Bowen. Yes. Ken Lord.
Yes.
Libby Brown. Yes. Marissa Desmond. Maria Dorsey. Yes. Brian Henniger.
Yes.
Emily Lazaro. Paul Malone. Paul Morrell.
Yes.
Aaron Lopate.
Yes.
Luke Preisner.
Yes.
12 in the affirmative. 0 in the negative, 3 absent. The rules are suspended to take item number 4 out of order. So the next topic is the MSBA's PDP comments and the team's response to those comments. So I will turn it over to the team.
So I will take this one. We just want to make sure that everyone's aware. So the PDP comments that we get from the MSBA is a regular part of their process that we go through. They will provide comments on every single submission that we give to them throughout the course of the project. So this is just the first iteration of this activity for this project as we've gone through. We did get the comments from the MSBA on 5/5, so May 5th, which I think was 2 Tuesdays before. And we're given 10 business days to respond, so a total of 2 weeks. And we did respond yesterday to sort of stay within that time frame of what they were looking for. When the MSBA provides those comments to us, they group their comments into 2 different documents, attachment A and attachment B. Attachment A is sort of like the catch-all for the majority of their comments, and they're looking at everything there from budget topics to finding where they are. Schedule comments, coordination between the ed plan and the space summary, as well as any items or statements that we need to be including within the PSR submission. They ask for a lot of acknowledgements of their rules and regulations, and that's all part of attachment A. Attachment B is specifically comments on the space summary. And that's interesting and important because what they do there is they start to give the district an idea of what spaces may be reimbursable and may not be reimbursable. And so when we start talking about the city of Medford's reimbursement percentage, overall, and what that dollar value is. It's the first insight that we get into MSBA's, thinking on those particular topics. What they give us at this first stage is not final by any means. It's really an initial, sense of what might be there, from a reimbursable standpoint. And there will be additional feedback and conversations that we have at the subsequent PSR submission, and then going all the way forward to schematic design, which is when all those things are locked in. That's the general breakdown between attachment A and B. Just a note that the educational plan is going to be modified in some cases by the responses that were provided as part of the PDP comments in this process that we went through. We don't provide the updated educational plan until we submit the PSR. And at that point, it's a very prescriptive approach. They want a red marked version so they can see the changes that are there, but they also want a final finished version that does not show any changes. So that will be sort of the formal ed plan moving forward in the process. And then one comment that the MSB also made, and I'm not sure if this is what Luke was alluding to earlier, was that they requested a school-only cost option be provided. And so that's really what they're asking for, is something that just represents the grades 9 to 12 school-related programs. So not say the district offices or other programs that are here, and not necessarily the preschool program as well, that would be brought here from outside the actual building. So that particular request is not something that was challenging for us to respond to in terms of creating. We actually have to provide them a specific submittal on that. I think by the end of this week or Monday of next week, which is Memorial Day. So we're just going to get it to them by the end of this week. But it's essentially taking all those program alternates that we already had included in the PDP cost estimate and that we repeated in the PSR cost of an estimate. We just pulled those out. And then that is the option that the MSBA is looking for. So that level of transparency and information that they just want to make sure is clear for everybody in the community was really already cooked into how we were estimating things. And so we're just pulling it out at their request so it can be viewed a little bit more easily moving forward. And then attachment B, again, is the comments on the space summary. They did ask us in some cases to shift spaces around between the different space categories, which is generally just a sign that they're looking to have something designated as reimbursable space versus non-reimbursable space. That's really the intent behind these shifts that we're asked to be doing. And then the space summary, we did include an updated version as part of the responses. Really, the only changes in the version that we provided as part of the comment response were the updates that were made at the April 27th school building committee meeting. The last time this group got together to reduce some spaces out, just we want to provide that update to the MSBA. And then we will submit the space summary again with the PSR report that will actually include all the revisions made that were in the comment responses. If they ask us to do something, we will do it. We'll make those changes in the space summary. We give it back to them. And then just a word about the process in terms of these comments. It's not a lot of time to actually orchestrate the responses to, I don't know how many pages we had in terms of comments before they were added in, maybe 26 different pages.
A lot.
The size and the quantity of the comments is really commensurate with the size and the complexity of the project. And this is a large, complex project. So it wasn't, we're not under the impression that we would just be getting like 5 pages of comments back for this. So that is sort of typical for our experience working through these. Really, the comments that we're dealing with the educational plan were answered by the district. We were working with Dr. Talbot, Dr. Calusi, and their entire teams in terms of pulling in other involved parties. If it's a director or some other sort of curriculum question, we actually went to the content expert on that particular topic. But those responses were written by the district. There were some that were more related to sort of the mechanics and the logistics of the submission. And so Left Field and SMA teamed up to provide those responses. There was a collective response and review process from all 3 groups as we went through it. So I just wanted to reinforce that it's a collaborative effort. It is not SMA just writing out all the answers and sending it off to the MSBA. It's something that was really a collaborative spirit, just as the educational plan was as we were putting it together, and just as the rest of the documentation being put together was collaborative. And yes, it did go back yesterday. So that's really the overall summary. I know that the comments themselves, the responses were distributed out to the building committee so that you can see all the individual comments, that were, submitted and the responses to them.
Are there any questions? Lou?
So if you want to commend the team on a thorough job, there's a lot to get through, and I cheated, I used agentic tools. ChatGPT trying to do a good job. So, but I did want to make a kind of a statement, and this is more philosophical, like 30,000 foot view. We're in a three-way constraint problem. One is the MSBA, that you want scope discipline, and it's obviously partial feedback. Shared yesterday, more on that later. Another constraint are, I'll say, community advocates who want expansive civic functions. And then the third constraint, which will emerge, is taxpayer affordability, and we'll hear more about it next week, or these terms and quantities data that is relevant to that. State will be doing that. And we'll learn whether they support the full vision of, I'll say, the advocacy. The current PDP response package shows the district is trying to hold these three equities together simultaneously. Whether that remains sustainable is probably the defining question of summer and fall. As an SBC, I think we're approaching a critical moment where we'll need to determine whether this project evolves into a more conventional, fundable high school project with strong MSBA support and participation, or a larger civic campus concept that may incur historically high local responsibility. The majority of this SBC has not seen the PDP feedback from the MSBA, and I asked that we all see it. We've seen attachment A and B, and from what I can tell, there's at least a cover letter as well. Cited in attachment. Yeah, it's cited in attachment B. And there may be other things. I'm just asking that we see it. And I hope we get it soon. If it's a public document, it may be subject to a records request. So if that's the case.
Well, can I just stop you right there? Is there a reason why that wasn't provided?
I'll go back and take a look at the document, but I thought I had sent everything out in one concise file, but I'll double check the file and make sure, but.
Okay, there's no reason, it's not being withheld.
Okay, I've only seen the red line, inline responded attachment A and B. So last week, through the weekly, we learned SBA wants us to include at least one 9 to 12 focused concept, and that statement caught my eye. The MSBA has been looking at PDP material from us since late February. There've been iterations, and even after all of that back and forth, they're still telling us we're missing something. And that something is at least one 9 to 12 focused high school concept. They went to, I'll say, bureaucratically, the extreme length of underlining it. It's the only passage that's underlined in all the pages of feedback, and that gets my attention. So, let's kind of give it serious scrutiny and do a good job there. And consider including that as part of our option space, since message to me, at least from MSBA, seems loud. I think time is on our side, and I'll say I've done a lot of research. I form my own opinions from that research, and perhaps others would draw different conclusions. I don't know, but I believe the MSBA values community readiness over landscape readiness. And they will give us the time to get things right. And next week, I know Mayor Leclerc will have a debt capacity presentation for us. I do ask that we listen to that. We wait for it, in fact. We gotta wait a week, but we need to hear it. before we make any big decisions regarding concepts and sizes and things like that. I think that we owe it to the voters, and I think the MSBA will have patience with us as we allow the natural evolution of projects to take place, and it takes, you know, I'll say different timescales for different communities. I believe that we're totally patient. So that's all I want to say. I would like to see the full feedback. I do appreciate the work that was done. I thought it was very good. And that's all. So not a question, just gonna say.
Respond to the, I guess I would caution against reading too much into the request for seeing the high school only option. We have been seeing that on recent larger high school projects, so don't feel as if Medford is being singled out. And I guess I want to commend the committee for structuring the cost information in such a way as that you have actually been looking at those numbers in that way already. So just to say, you're not being, you all as Medford are not being singled out with that request.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Lisa, I just have a question for clarification, relating to what Luke was saying, but. Does the MSBA care if we have all of the, like, the administrative wing or early childhood? If that's outside of the scope of their work, I'm assuming that we're saying if we include it, Medford is gonna pay for it.
Yeah.
So they don't care if it's there, right?
Yeah, when we spoke with the MSBA and about this comment specifically, they said, you gave us all those options and they're all the same, you know, essentially from a space standpoint. So they said, we want to see, you know, an option that eliminates those community aspects and what, you know, a K to or 9 to 12 high school would look like. So we asked that question, you know, about the community spaces and yeah, they said they won't tell us what we can and can't build. They just want to be, they just want to make sure that we have looked at, you know, several different options, and in this case, an enclosure.
Well, does that mean that we have to have like one of these options, like of our 5 or 6, an option that's designed out that doesn't have those spaces? Is that what they're saying?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Dr. Lucy?
And do they want to know from the city, the district, this committee, what happens to those community facing organizations if they're not included in that plan? Or do they not care where those things would go?
I think that's more what Medford cares about than the MSBA. It's certainly like they're aware of that reality, but I think what they want is that the community understands if programs that are here are being unhoused in some way, where are they going, right? I think that's the big question that needs to be answered in that scenario, outside of the context of what it is.
And I would say that in our conversations about some of these things, in order to have a good conversation about unhousing things that belong, that reside here right now, A, there has to be a place for them to go, and B, there has to be an assessment of what that space is, its availability and its needs, right?
And
So,
costs.
and its costs. And so, for example, like there's lots of energy around everybody having an idea about what happens to Curtis Tufts when the Curtis Tufts program comes up here. In order for us to responsibly like take something off the table because we're gonna put it in Curtis Tufts, we need to know what it would cost to do that, which would include a separate project outside of the funding of this project. And it would require remediation of that building to fit its next purpose, right? So there are high schoolers in that building right now. So I've seen the community talk about wanting to put the ECC there. It's first of all, not big enough from a square footage perspective. And second of all, in addition to ADA requirements and, you know, space, classroom spaces, like there's a number of other considerations in making a building small enough for kids this big, right, to inhabit such a building. So for us to think about as a community, if we're gonna unhouse something, we have to have a place to put them. if we're gonna unhouse the kids' corner, if we're gonna unhouse the welcome center, if we're gonna unhouse central office, like, there has to be an alternative. And what I would like to see this committee do is acknowledge that we shouldn't be making decisions about removing things from this project until we know where it can go. And that would be a more cost-effective option for the city than to just sort of like cast some things out to feel good right now, because it's not going to feel good to have to pay more to do something later. So what I understand is that we have time to make all of those decisions with real data as we look into the summer and into the fall, and we have time until October to make those decisions. So I would like to see us use that time to have those conversations and make those decisions based on data, rather than sort of reading into something that the MSBA is saying and interpreting it in a way like it's more common than it's ever been for them to be asking for a 9 to 12 only school, so that there is a clear cost comparison in the project that people can understand and latch onto. So I don't think any of those things have to happen before we make a decision on a single preferred option. And I think all of those things get easier when we have a single preferred option. So we don't have to do anything on any particular timeline, but every day that we wait is another day that the roof on the pool is held on by straps. Every single day that we wait is another day where the cost escalates. And I do think this committee needs to figure out how to hold like all of these complexities and not let perfect be the enemy of the good. We can make a decision about a single option, in my opinion, on June 10th, as we decide, as we have previously outlined, and we can still continue to make decisions into October. And as we have said all along, we will not know the cost of this project. So anyone who tells you they know what the cost of the project is, they are making assumptions. We will not know the final cost of this project until the construction manager comes on board, schematic design is complete, and that is February of next year on the current schedule. So I think we have time to do everything that the community, answer all the community's questions about how much things will cost, and could something go to Curtis Tufts, or is there some other space that nobody knows about in the community that could house some piece of this and that would meet the needs of the programs. Like, we have time to do all of those things. We don't have to do any of those things between now and June. We have a choice to make a single preferred design decision by June, which is our previously stated timeline. So those are the options before us. Libby?
I totally agree with you. We can figure all that out after June. I'm curious though, because some of the studies, I assume anything we're looking at what the first steps, like that's all out of scope of
That's correct.
the design phase. So someone would have to do this with a side
Yes.
parallel study, right?
Yep.
I don't know if we have an idea.
And the work on such a project would also be outside of the cost of this project. Right. It would have to be very separate.
It seems like the most critical piece of information anyone really needs right now is like again, the preliminary cost, the cost difference. It just sounds like we already have that.
Yes.
It's, yeah, it would look smaller on the site, but that's just maybe much of the difference is. It's just what's the cost of it. So yeah, so we already have that.
Yes, we do.
Chair,
Mayor?
yes, we have the cost differences, which we've been pretty transparent about what each option costs out at. And then today we did get, I think it was sent to the committee, but late in the day, we did get cost estimates on what would be covered by the MSBA on each option. Each of the three options for each option we have, and what the city would have to provide through a debt exclusion or otherwise. So we have estimates, although I agree, we're not gonna get a final number until we do the month's work of work. So we are talking about a timeline for residents, especially since the financial presentation will be next week with lack of debt capacity and, impacts to taxpayers. We will then have a ton of work to do over the summer, and then those potential space reductions and all the motions, I think we're gonna have after Labor Day through October. So I understand that, and it makes me feel better that we are gonna do a financial presentation next week, so that this committee and the public knows everything that's on the table, and then we also have a timeline on the hard work that has to be done.
Joan?
Just a question, when we're talking about the 9 to 12 option, is the Curtis Tuck still included in that 9 to 12 option? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
We are back to, whether we want to, take a vote on this motion to formally adopt the alternatives that we saw tonight. So if there is a motion, I'm happy to entertain it.
Well, the motion's called one more, but, sorry, just on this, I have a feeling this will potentially be approved, and I just wanna state that it is all happening very quickly and last minute, and I know that the public may have additional questions on the alternates as well as this committee, so that I just wanna make sure that our team is ready, willing, and able to answer questions or email and at future meetings. I know it's a lot to digest in a very short amount of time. And so I just want to make sure that the public and this committee has time to ask questions at future meetings and behind the scenes on these alternate modifications.
We have an upcoming community forum in about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks from today.
Thank you.
I make the motion to adopt, yeah, motion to adopt the proposed resolution.
Motion to adopt the proposed resolution by Nicole. Is there a second? By Libby. Questions about the motion?
Lisa, will there need to be another motion to accept, to have a design that's just 9-12?
That's already been handled. Like the project team has the costs and can present that.
So is it one of those?
It is-
She needs, you need like see a plan that's a smaller building, Yeah. right? That, I think that's what we're saying, it doesn't have. I'll let them speak to that.
Correct. The costs are available now, and we'll get to that in our next agenda item. Has the MSBA asked for a visual of said option?
As part of the PSR submission, yes, and we have started on that.
Okay.
For what they want as a response to their comments, they'll be accepting the dollar value update. As well as just a written description of what it would be, something that would be at the level of the PDP submission is what they're looking for initially.
Okay.
A question. A question of the 9-12 request. Have they specified that it be an entirely new build? Or a rental ad? Has the team, selected one of those concepts? It has to be one or the other.
Right. So no, they didn't. They were not specific. I think they specifically wrote it that like it could be any of them is how they actually termed it, something along those lines. Not to be quoted verbatim, but the intent was that the design team in the district can sort of select that from just because it can really be applied to any of them. It's not like option specific. We chose to look at D 1.1 because it's not a deed restricted option, and so it has that benefit to it. And it's the simplest thing to sort of conceive of in terms of how it doesn't like impact the existing construction. But again, we can take those programs out of any one of the options from a an estimating standpoint pretty easily, especially with the cost estimating analysis document that allows you to sort of toggle in between different options.
Yeah, and you'll see in the cost update tonight, how we have it broken out moving forward. That will show a clear kind of 9 to 12 school. What the existing programs in the school are. What's here today, and then, all the other alternates that are being proposed to bring here, so that we'll have like, and you'll see in just a second. Just so that's very clear, everybody understands what a 9 to 12 school would cost, what a 9 to 12 with the programs in the building today would cost. And then what a building with all the desired programs would be, and then that way we can have all that information readily available for everyone.
So as a point of clarification, what I'm hearing is, there needs to be at least one. The project team, in the interest of time and please looked at D11 as a starting point. But I didn't hear anything that excluded the possibility, also a 9-12 rental ad. there's benefits there. Gentlemen talked about body carbon. I think it makes sense to preserve some spaces. I have affinity for some of our hard to replace spaces. And so in the future, we can talk about, I want to confirm that we can talk about a 912 rent-a-lad concept. And at some point, I would expect that a new build and a rent-a-lad would have identifier, whether some alphanumeric code. Just want to confirm that those expectations are reasonable and heavy.
Yeah, and I think, the way I see this playing out is the costs exist for that labor to exist on any of the existing options. So the way the cost spreadsheet is built, if you wanted to take any of our options and say, what would it look like if it was just 9 to 12? You can do that right now. So that exists. If we're saying that we want a different set of visuals than D, like we can do that before the PSR submission. But we also can pick an option and still keep talking about that as a choice as we talk about that kind of space reduction, all the programming, all of that is going to continue to be talked about. So let's say we pick one of the C options that we just adopted. We could go into July and into August and be like, you know what, we have another great home for the MFN and everyone loves it and it's not going to cost us more money as a community. And so we're happy with that. So we're going to take that out. And then we could say, and we're happy with, a location for something else. And, why don't we just forget about all the other programs that are here and just do a 9? We can do all of those things with a single option. So right now there's costs across all of the options, but we always have that choice until October to take whichever option we choose and continue to modify it up to and including getting to just a 9 to 12 school.
Okay, yeah, and when you
Yeah.
take it on the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
That's all I have to, all my process.
Yeah.
All right, and just another clarification, if this motion were approved in its current form, we would have A11, we would have C22A, C34A, and then this TV or a D11A that reflects a 912.
Well, D.
In the original D1.
Well, A is just
And the original
Yeah.
D11.
incorrect. And you have B.
So,
And B.
and the, oh, and
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 B.
so,
Yeah.
so a total of 6.
Yep.
Okay, so if this motion passes, we have a total of 6. From that, okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I thought it was.
Well,
If we need 9 to 12.
So, I mean, really, you have 5 options, and then you have a 9 to 12 only version of 4 of them, so you have 9 options.
Sure, that's the way we look at it too. That wasn't apparent to me earlier.
Yeah, so we would have 9 options,
Okay.
at that point,
All right.
if you're considering those 9 to 12 discrete options. I see, like, in my mind, I just see them as choices that we can make across 5 options, 4, actually, but because you can't do that with 4, right, but,
Fine, I follow it, thank you.
yeah. Any other questions before I call the roll? Okay. Jenny Graham, yes. Mayor Longo Kern, yes. Dr. Galucci, yes. Marty Cabral.
Yes.
Bill Bowen, yes. Ken Lord,
Yes.
Libby Brown.
Yes.
Marissa Desmond, Maria Dorsey.
Yes.
Brian Hilliard,
Yes.
Emily Lazaro. Paul Malone,
Yes.
Paul Morrell.
Yes.
Aaron Lopate.
Yes.
Luke Preisner.
Yes.
13 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. 2 absent, the motion is approved. Okay, next item on our agenda is the PSR cost estimate review, so I'm gonna turn it back over to the team.
Cooperating up, just moving up.
All right, so just to kind of recap, these are the 6 options that we provided to the cost estimators for the preferred schematic report estimate. You will notice that these are the C 2.2 and C 3.4 options, not the A that were just adopted. We do not have cost for those options yet. However, they are very similar they're exactly the same square footage. There's not major changes in, you know, the constructability of the shift. So we feel pretty confident that the numbers that you'll see for those C options will be very similar for these adjustments. We actually feel that because we're bringing the building further south from Edgerly Field, there's less site work and less rock removal. So we are asking the estimators to take a look and see how that could potentially adjust the cost of these revised options. But we think it would be in a positive direction in terms of reducing costs. So we will, you know, make sure we have all that information. We should have it before the meeting next week. But I just wanted to kind of point that out as we look through these. So going to the next slide, I'll just do a quick explanation of this so everybody kind of understands how it works. The options are across the top, and then down the side are kind of those different scenarios that I was just explaining. So that top row is for the high school only, just like a nomenclature thing. TPC is total project cost. So these are all total project costs. This is, you know, the value of the project that would have to be passed at a debt exclusion. Sorry, not as a debt exclusion on the warrant. And then we'll be factoring what the actual debt exclusion will be as we move forward. The second row is the total project cost of the high school plus the current programs that exist in the high school today. This scenario also assumes a renovation of the pool and the gym in the A, B, and C options. It assumes a new pool in the D options. The next line is everything in the row above, just all of the programs that were being proposed in the SOI and through the PDP phase. The only difference here will be the C option. I'm sorry. Sorry. I need to double check the D 2.1 with the no pool. And then the very last row is what the total project cost would be with all programs and a new pool in the D options. For simplicity and looking at these as it compared to PDP, that second row I'm sorry, that third row is what we were basing the PDP estimates off of, which was all of the programs, a renovation of the pool. I'm sorry, it should be a pool for the D option. So we went back and tried to compare how that looked versus the PDP cost. So you'll see the comparisons here, and I'll highlight, you know, some of the real big obvious changes. In the 811 option, we had initially during PDP been around a $436 million project that has increased to a $528 million project. That is largely due to an addition of a radon system for the foundation. We had not included anything in PDP, but felt it was important to include something. We're not 100% sure if it will be required, but we wanted to keep it in the cost for now. And if we feel we can take it out later on, we can do so. But that was a big part of the change in the A11 option. B21 didn't see a ton of changes overall. We're right around the same overall total project cost, with a slight increase in 12 million. I think a lot of the B21 is just again the complexity and the phasing that comes along with an addition renovation. This does include the modulars because we cannot renovate the building without displacing students. So this is the only option that is currently assuming modulars aside from the A11 option. C 2.2 previously was around 825 million. That has come down to 796. This is largely due to some of those space reductions that we saw over the SBC meeting on April 27th. Like I said, we did remove the modular classrooms from this option. When we looked at whether modulars could potentially, save money by reducing the length of the project, it actually does not. So we actually feel that the no modulars versus modulars is not a cost saver. So proceeding without modulars is the better route, even from a cost standpoint. So that was positive to see. The C 3.4 option also stayed right around the same, increased slightly from 803 to 814. This is largely due to the durations. It is a longer project than C 2.2. So you have a bit of increased time, as well as all of the general conditions and requirements that come with constructing the actual project. The biggest changes from a cost reduction we did see in the D11 and D21 options. D11 was originally up around 864 and has come down to 766. This is a more clear kind of representation of the space reduction, being able to construct this building in more of its entirety on the lower part of the site. Didn't see as much increase in phasing. So it's why some of the D options, or why the two D options are seeing a larger increase, being new construction. It's simpler from a construction standpoint. And so the space reductions that we saw previously are more obvious in the new build options. And then D 2.1, we were up around 830 and it came down to 783. And similar to D11. This was the simplest construction project. But given the vote we had held tonight, it's no longer being considered. So I will also note that the PDP costs at the top are slightly different than what had been shown on, like, at all of our community forums and all of the events that we are going to. That is because during the PDP phase, we were carrying different parking options and in some of the options. We pulled out those parking options and just did great parking to match what we priced in the base bid for PSR. So that's why those numbers are slightly lower than what has been shown over the last few months or so. And that was just so that we could do this comparison and kind of see where we are at compared to where we were in PDP using the same size building and the same scope. So it's usually a question that we get is how does this compare to the last phase? So that's why we pulled this together and why some of those PDP numbers are slightly different than what you have been seeing out in the public recently.
Nicole?
So we talked about earlier about MSBA being like agnostic if we have those programs that they're not gonna reimburse for the building. Would those have to be pulled out for a separate debt exclusion like the pool, or those can be included in that?
Yeah, that's specific to the pool.
Okay, it's
As
just,
far as like in a new pool specifically, it does not need to be a separate debt exclusion in the ad rail.
so the pool is just like.
Yep.
Exists in this.
Yes,
Specific
those are
place.
top.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay. That is the end of our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? By Mayor Longo
Second.
Kern, seconded by Nicole. We'll call the roll. Jenny Graham, yes. Mayor Longo Kern.
Yes.
Dr. Galucci. Yes. Marty Cabral. Yes. Kim Nolan.
Yes.
Tim Ward.
Yes.
Libby Brown.
Yes.
Marissa Desmond. Maria Dorsey. Yes. Brian Hilliard. Yes. Emily Lazaro. Paul Malone.
Yes.
Paul Morrell.
Yes.
Randall Lopate.
Yes.
Lou Preisner.
Yes.
13 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, 2 absent. The meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.